so much for inviting me here, and I'm super happy to be here to talk about my recent work with Lijie Chen on strong average case lower bounds from non-trivial derandomization. So first, let me give you some context and the motivation about the question. So the first context is about the circuit lower bounds program for trying to prove maybe NP not equal to P at the end. So since the 1980s, people wanted to prove stronger and stronger circuit lower bounds to finally maybe separate NP from P. But still, this program has seen some obstacles, and now there are some frontier questions. The first one is trying to get stronger average case lower bounds for the circuit class ACC0. Can you hear me, by the way? And the second one is to prove super polynomial lower bounds for the class threshold of threshold. I'm going to define them in a couple of minutes later. And a second big question in TCS is about trying to do derandomization and maybe proving P equals BPP. To do this, people have tried the framework of designing better and better pseudo-random generator. But currently, this program is still seeing some obstacle. We don't know how to get a PRG for even AC0 of parity circuits, which is I'm going to define in a couple of minutes. Another question is that do we really have to use PRG? So meaning that is black box derandomization equivalent to white box derandomization in some ways? So first, let me start with this motivation. So people wanted to prove circuit lower bounds, of course, but now we know it's pretty hard. But it seemed not that hard back in the old days. The quest at that time was to understand the constant depth circuit first. So first, people studied the AC0 circuit class, which is constant depth and or not circuits. And the gates have unbounded fanning. From a beautiful line of works, people have established strong lower bounds for AC0. And the hard function is just parity. Parity is a function which outputs 1 if the number of 1s in the input is odd. It's a very simple function. So now we know parity is hard for AC0, which is good. So let's make AC0 stronger to prove some better lower bounds. So what about adding parity gates to AC0? So the philosophy there was to strengthen the circuit class just a little bit by adding the most simple function it cannot compute as available gates. So now you can grow the circuit class bit by bit and try to prove stronger and stronger lower bounds. So hopefully you can get to general circuit maybe very soon. So then people defined AC0 P circuits, which is AC0 circuits extended with mod P gates. And by mod P, I mean it's an extension of parity. It outputs 1 if P does not divide the number of 1s in the input. So mod 2 is just parity. So by beautiful works of Redboroff and Smolensky, they prove strong lower bounds for AC0 P for a prime P, like 2 or 3. And the hard function for AC0 parity is just mod 3. OK, nice. So far, everything has been pretty successful. So now we know mod 3 is hard for AC0 too. The next question, naturally, is to make AC0 parity a little bit stronger. What about adding mod 3 gates to AC0 parity? Shouldn't be that harder to prove new circuit lower bounds. So here's a cute diagram for showing the evolution of circuit classes. You start with AC0 and add parity to it. It becomes AC02. And then you can add mod 3 to it. And then it becomes AC06. Because having mod 6 gates is equivalent to having both mod 2 and mod 3 at the same time. Somehow it turns out the circuit class AC06 is much harder to analyze, and people just didn't know how to prove lower bounds on it. So now let's define AC0M to be the circuit class which is constant depth and or not mod M gates. And we want to focus on a case where M is a composite, because we know for a prime it's easy to prove lower bound. And since then, things went downhill. It seems very hard to prove circuit lower bounds for AC06. Indeed, it was open for a long time that whether nexp, the non-deterministic exponential time, has polynomial size AC06 circuits of depth 3. So it seemed pretty hard. But here is a slight generation of AC0M. So ACC0 circuit class is a union of AC0M for all constants M. So think about you can use the mod M gate, but the M should be a constant independent of the input length. So in 2011, R. Williams proved that NX does not have polynomial size ACC0 circuits. So this is pretty good because theoretically speaking, there are some barriers for proving circuit lower bounds, like relativization, algebraization, and natural proofs. And this work kind of bypassed all the barriers. And also in terms of the proof techniques, it's pretty interesting because it combines so many classical gems from the complexity theory together to prove these new circuit lower bounds. It's a big breakthrough. But of course, as you can see, it has some drawbacks comparing to previous lower bounds. The first obvious one is that NX is pretty big, and we want lower bound for NP. And previous lower bounds for previous lower bounds by the random restriction or Razborov-Smolensky, they are usually for easy functions in P, like majority or parity. And also, it only gives you worst-case lower bounds. And the previous lower bounds usually can be adapted to the average case. For example, we have average case lower bound for AC0 and also for AC0P. And the average case lower bound can have more applications, most importantly, building PRG. So with these drawbacks in mind, people tried to strengthen these lower bounds. So in 2012, R. Williams proved that the NX capital NEXP, so which is the exponential time version of the more famous class NP capital NP, does not have polynomial size AC0 circuits. So this makes NX a bit smaller, from a bit smaller. So then in 2017, Lijie Chen, Olivera, and Santandem, they proved that NX cannot be half plus 1 over polylog approximated by AC0 circuits. So now they extended it to the average case, but the correlation is still half plus 1 over polylog, which is not enough for constructing PRG, say. Then in 2018, Murray and Williams proved that the NQP, which is non-deterministic quasi-polynomial time, does not have polynomial size AC0 circuits. This is great because it pushes the NX from exponential to something much closer to polynomial. And later, last year, I proved that NQP cannot be half plus 1 over polylog approximated by AC0 circuits. And also the same holds for NQP capital NQP. So this improves all the above by combining the quasi-polynomial time with the average case. So the natural question is that can we improve this approximation ratio? Because this is half plus 1 over beta 01, which is good, but still, if you want to build PRG, this is not enough. And there's some technical issue is that the NX and the coax lower bound actually require 1 bit of advice, but it's not very important.
It's Merlin needs to be approximated by 1 plus.
It just means over the uniform distribution, all AC0 circuits cannot compute this function by more than half plus 1 over polylog fraction. So it's always over uniform distribution, because that's what you want for constructing a PRG.
It means out of all the inputs, they can succeed, but not more than this fraction of the inputs.
Yeah, it's always over uniform distribution. Yeah, sure.
Maybe the relation to PRG is not clear, but what you want is something like one of a polynomial in N, just because constructions of pseudo-random generators use reductions and combinations, and you need to add up errors, maybe polynomially many times, so you cannot use this type of small
Yeah.
step like one of a
Yeah, thanks. Actually, I'm going to explain that later. Yeah, yeah. Thanks so much. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just about to get what Abby says. So and now let's see the second motivation for this talk. So the program of getting PRG actually basically stopped at the AC0 parity circuit. The main reason is that we don't have strong average case lower bounds. I'm going to explain the situation. So first, what is PRG? I guess you may already know, but so PRG is a function stretching from S bits to N bits. And if the S bits are distributed uniformly, then the output of the PRG should look random to a function on to a randomized algorithm which require N bits of randomness. So this can de-randomize the randomized algorithm A in 2 to the S, roughly 2 to the S deterministic time, because you can just enumerate all the S bits and try to compute the majority of A's output on the outputs of the PRG. So people wanted to show P equals BPP by probably building PRGs for stronger and stronger circuit classes. So for this purpose, we actually need to have a PRG for P/poly, which is general circuit classes, with all log n seed lengths. Because you have to enumerate all the seeds, so 2 to the O log n will be polynomial. But currently, we don't even have PRGs for AC0 parity with, say, n2 little o1 seed lengths. So why is that? So the state of the art is that we have PRGs for AC0 circuits with polylog n seed lengths, and which is nearly optimal. But the best PRG for fooling AC0 parity needs seed lengths more than 0.99n. So it's not very good. The reason is that we don't have strong enough average case lower bound against AC0 parity. So apply the classical work by Nissan and Wijesen. We know that if we are given a function that cannot be half plus epsilon over m approximated by AC0 parity, we can use that to construct a PRG with m output bits at epsilon force AC0 parity. Epsilon force means that the output cannot be distinguished from a uniform distribution with probability epsilon, something like that. So looking at the parameter, so that's a loss of over m here. The reason is the famous hybrid argument, but I'm not going to look at that. So this means at least we need a hard function that cannot be half plus epsilon approximated by AC0 parity for epsilon at least smaller than 1 over n. And the state-of-the-art average case lower bound against AC0 parity is the one by Smolensky and Redborough. Their method can show that majority cannot be half plus, say, n2 minus 0.49 approximated by AC0 parity circuits. And in fact, it's not clear before this work, it's consistent that e to the np, an even bigger class than nx, can be half plus 1 over root n approximated by polynomial size AC0 parity circuits. And the same also holds for log n degree f2 polynomial. Log n degree f2 polynomial is like a special class of quasi-polynomial size AC0 parity circuits. It's just a depth 2 circuit with the top gate parity and the bottom layer end. And the bottom line is that this lower bound, the approximation ratio is not enough to yield any good enough PRG. So now in this work, we prove that NQP, non-deterministic quasi-polynomial time, cannot be half plus 1 over polynomial approximated by polynomial size AC0 circuit. This is for any polynomial. And the same holds for NQP capital NQP with 1 beta factorize. Oh, by the way, you can feel free to ask any question if you have one. So first of all, this improved the half plus 1 over polylog result in the previous work. And also, this surpassed the half plus 1 over root n barrier for AC0 parity. And of course, here we are proving lower bounds against an NQP complete function, but still the approximate ratio is better than half plus 1 over root n. And for proving this new lower bound, we established a new connection between circuit lower bounds and the non-trivial derandomization. So let's first look at the question. It's called circuit acceptance probability problem. So you are given a circuit C, and you want to estimate the acceptance probability of C with an additive error of 1 over S, where S is the size of the circuit. So this problem is clearly in BPP. You can just toss many coins, take many samples. And we show that if we have a non-trivial cap algorithm for sub-exponential size C circuits, this implies that NQP cannot be half plus 1 over polynomially approximated by polynomial size C circuits. And by tweaking the parameters, similar result also holds for NE and NP. And also, this problem is in P under the widely believed conjecture promise P equals promise BPP. But the point here is that we only need to have some non-trivial saving on the brute force 2 to the n time algorithm. And it's actually much easier to design such an algorithm. That's how we prove the lower bound. So another frontier class is the threshold of threshold circuits. So what is that threshold gate? It's basically just a
Can you go back to this?
Oh.
Yeah, so I don't know if this main theorem, maybe you want to spend a little breathing time on this. I don't know if everybody swallowed it. So there is a history to such results where a non-trivial algorithm just beating 2 to the n a little bit over to test some property of circuits. In this case, that it was it's hard to approximate, or it's computing how many ones up to some factor implies this lower bound, this worst case lower bound. So I guess it's a big strengthening of the original and the subsequent Ryan and other students. And the main, I guess the main technical improvement is getting the 1 over poly and the half over, right? Because if you wanted just 1 over poly log, this was,
Yes.
not through the same approach, through this simulation, right? To this non-trivial simulation, put to the n minus n to the epsilon. So the main thing is to replace 1 over poly log by poly 1 over poly.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So the same theorem was known in the previous work. If we only want a half plus 1 over polylog approximation, the improvement here is that we somehow improve it to half plus 1 over polynomial for any polynomial. So now we can basically show that non-trivial derandomization can imply very strong average case lower bound, which actually can be used to build PRG. That's the improvement here. Okay, so now let's see some application, maybe some more frontier question. So a threshold gate is basically a half space. So you are given a vector W, and the fx outputs 1 if and only if the inner product between W and x is greater than some threshold t. You can think about W and t both of integers. And we think about majority gates as the special case when the weights of the W and the threshold t are both bounded by a polynomial. for simplicity. So now threshold of threshold is basically a two-layer circuits, and both layers are consist of threshold gates. So it's pretty simple. You can think about it as a special depth 3 neural network. And we can also define maybe threshold of majority, so threshold top, majority bottom, and the majority of threshold, majority of majority, all the variants. And the exponential lower bounds are known for these subclasses. But the frontier question is that we don't even know whether nexp is in threshold of threshold, or whether nexp is in depth 3 majority of majority of majority. So just the depth 3 version of TC0. So there are some I'm going to talk about some potential approaches in this talk. So first, let's see an application of the previous general theorem. So Williams in 14 proved that there's a non-trivial derandomization of ACC0 of threshold circuits, so which is ACC0 circuits extended with a bottom layer of threshold gates. So now, because we can apply the main theorem, because previously we showed that non-trivial derandomization implies strong average case lower bound. So now we can show NQP cannot be half plus 1 over polynomial approximated by polynomial size ACC0 threshold circuits. So consequently, we know that NQP cannot be computed exactly by majority of ACC0 of threshold circuits. It's kind of very close to threshold of threshold. And the same holds for NQP capital NQP with 1 bit of advice. So the first question is that does majority of ACC0 contain threshold? If so, then we already have threshold lower bounds, because this circuit class will just contain threshold. In context, we actually know AC0 of majority contains threshold. So if you flip the order of the layers, then it contains threshold. And a second corollary is that if there's a non-trivial derandomization algorithm for majority of majority, then by our previous connection, we know it will just imply new lower bounds for new average case lower bounds against the majority of majority, which will imply nexp is not in majority of majority of majority. So, and we already know there are some strong exponential lower bounds against majority of majority. So the question is that can we mine any non-trivial derandomization algorithms from the exponential lower bounds proof for majority of majority or threshold majority? That will imply nexp not in majority of majority of majority. It's pretty interesting because the lower bound proof for majority of majority is actually established via some like rank method, a sign rank or something, approximate rank, sign rank. So here's another application. And we know building PRG seems pretty hard, and we stop at the AC0 parity. So why we stick to them to get derandomization? PRG, the issue with PRG is that it does not look at the circuit. So it's a black box derandomization. You just output a list and try it on the circuit. So maybe you can look at the given circuit, try to do something very clever about like analyzing the structure of the circuit, do some structure lemma, and get some better algorithm. That seems very possible. So what about white box derandomization? White box means that you don't treat the circuit as black box and try to open it. But that's an old work by Impagliazzo, Carbonet, and Wijison in 2002, showing that in certain settings, looking into the circuit does not really help for piecewise poly. So you can prove that if that's a sub-exponential time white box derandomization of piecewise poly is equivalent to sub-exponential time black box derandomization of piecewise poly. There's some conditions. It is infinite often with some advice, and also it's non-deterministic. But still, the message is that in some non-trivial and interesting settings, these two are equivalent. But this is for piecewise poly. And we prove that non-trivial white box derandomization, which is algorithm for CAP, implies strong average case lower bounds, which further implies PRG. So corollaries, in certain settings, looking into a circuit does not help for all circuit classes C. So this means for nearly all interesting circuit class C, you will have a subexponential time white box determination of C, which will be equivalent to having a subexponential time black box determination of C. Of course, there are some conditions, but the message is that there are certain interesting settings they are equivalent. Yeah. The technical condition is that they are closed under like a constant finding ends or something, which is pretty minor. So OK, so now here's the first part. I just finished the first part of the talk. Any questions so far? Oh, so infinite often means that the algorithm only has to work infinite often. So there's some like there's an infinite sequence of inputs such that the algorithm works.
Input sizes.
Oh, input sizes, yeah, input sizes, yeah, sure. And with that advice just means that the algorithm needs some advice, like n to the epsilon piece of advice. It's not important the technical definition is not important, just that there's some setting, yeah, you know. So OK, so now I'm going to try to explain this work in detail. But the issue for me is that it depends on many recent works. So we have to depend on many ideas from previous works, like from Murray and Williams, the paper we just saw, and from the paper with my paper with Williams last year, and also the previous paper proving half plus one polylog and lower bound.
So when you say this work, you mean this theorem you cited in the beginning, that non-trivial. When you say this work, you are back to the theorem that gave all these consequences. So improving the approximation from 1 over polylog to 1 over polylog.
Yeah.
So this is what this.
Yes.
When you say this work, you mean specifically this theorem.
Yeah, sure.
You get two results. One result is that for NQP intersect co-NQP, you have this lower bound.
Yeah.
And you have a problem in NQP for which you cannot approximate it with the ACC. And the second one was some extension of result about black box and white box.
Yeah, it's like a corollary of the first connection. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Because previously we showed that if we have a white box generalization, this implies average case lower bound. And this average case lower bound, yes, the truth table of the hard function can be just plugged into the NW design to get PRG. Right. That's basically how it works.
It's the same way.
And there's some technical details because actually the algorithm requirement but anyway, it's just basically how it works, yeah. And actually there are even more works we depend on, like many works. So today I'm not going to talk about all the works. I don't have time, right? So I'm going to give you a roadmap and a perspective on all these works. And I will try to build the perspective on a single viewpoint, which is circuit lower bounds via generalization. But before that, I want to show you like why it's harder to prove average case lower bounds. Like why the Murray and Williams connection cannot be simply modified to prove an average case lower bound. And otherwise, my work will be trivial. so let's see how it worked. So it's basically a proof by contradiction. First, you assume NQP is in ACC0. And then you try to apply the so-called easy witness lemma to conclude that every NQP verifier has polynomials at ACC0 witness. And then you use that and a non-trivial algorithm to contradict non-limit time hierarchy. So the easy witness lemma is very important, but I'm not going to talk about what that it means because it's not required for the later of the talk. It's just that if you assume NQP is in ACC0, then something very crucial follows from that, which is crucial for the proof. So how can we adapt this to the average case? Maybe just try to start again with the proof by contradiction. Let's assume NQP can be approximated by ACC0 circuits. And then we still try to apply the easy witness lemma to conclude the same thing. and then we can use that. Maybe we can still try the same thing to get the contradiction. The problem is that if we start from the average case containment assumption, we don't know how to conclude the same statement of the easy witness lemma, because the easy witness lemma only works from the easy witness lemma only works from the worst case containment assumption. It's not clear how can you get the same thing from the average case containment, and the old proof just breaks. So it's pretty sad. So we don't know how to get an average case version of easy witness lemma. And so how the previous work by Chen, Oliveira, and Santanem get rid of this barrier? So they actually do this with bypass this issue with a big weapon. So they just use worst case to average case harness amplification. So it's a big weapon. So the idea is pretty straightforward. You start with a worst case lower bound. Say for a function L in nx, capital Nx, is worst case hard for ACA0 circuits. Then you compute the error correcting code of the entire choose table of L. And then you make it as the choose table of the new language L tilde. And then by carefully choosing the error correcting code and the decoder, you can show that L tilde is average case hard for ACA0 circuits. And of course, the issue is that the weapon is too big, because if you want to compute the correcting code of the entire choose table, the choose table has exponential size, so this requires at least exponential time. So even if we start with a worst case hard language in NQP capital NQP, the resulting function L tilde will not be in NQP anymore. It will be in like NQP cap. It will be in like NXP or something, because going through the choose table requires exponential time. So that's one issue. And actually, even for NXP, their paper can only give you a half plus n2 minus little o1 in approximability bounds. So why is that? The reason is that we have to be very careful about the error correcting code. So the proof roughly goes as follows: if L can, suppose for the contradiction, suppose if L tilde can be approximated by ACA0 C circuits, then we try to use a local list decoder D to correct all the error to get a worst case to get a circuit which worst case computes L. That's the idea. So, but now the new circuit computing L in the worst case will be D to the C, where D is the local decoder, and the C is the circuit approximate the L tilde. And to obtain a contradiction, we need D to the C is 0, because we only have that the language L is worst case hard for ACA0 circuits. But by some famous works of Greenberg, Stratel, and Viola, and also their previous work in 2010, they show that if D can correct half minus n2, or half minus 1 over polynomial error, then D is at least as powerful as majority. So this is called harness amplification require majority.
This is true even if case is half, no?
Hmm?
This is true even if case is 1/2, or maybe 1. It doesn't have to be as big as you want.
Good question. Yeah, but all lower bound works for all case, so.
Yeah. No, I understand. I mean, that's a surprising result in some sense. You cannot beat 1/12 of them in this particular, obviously.
I see. Oh.
They get close to what them.
I see. Oh, that's pretty interesting. Yeah. So, but okay. So people conjecture that the majority is not in ACA0. So it's not clear how can we still put D to the C in ACA0 to obtain the contradiction we want. So that's one more reason why it's very hard to push this worst case to average case amplification stuff. So okay, so that is, now we see some difficulty with the previous approaches. We need to bypass them. We need to prove an average case lower bound directly without going through either the easy witness lemma because we don't have them in the average case. And also hardness amplification. The first reason is that it requires exponential time. The second reason is that it requires majority in the decoder, and we don't know why the majority is in 800. So we have to use a more direct approach, which is combining MA lower bound with the non-deterministic PRG. So let's review some earlier works on circuit lower bounds and derandomization. So by our previous work in the last century, they show that MAX is not in P/poly. So what is MA algorithm? MA algorithm is just NP with a randomized verifier. So you are given an input X, you get some witness Y, and put some call in R. And if X is in L, then that exists a witness, you accept it with high probability. And otherwise, for all witness, you reject it with high probability. And the MA is just that the verification algorithm A runs in polynomial time. So MAX is the exponential version for that. So this actually means if promise P equals promise BPP, then MAX can be derandomized to NX. So NX not in P/poly. So that's some common viewpoint about that is that, OK, maybe this means derandomization is pretty hard. But maybe if we are more optimistic, we can say, OK, let's do derandomization to prove some circuit lower bounds. So how to derandomize Merlin-Arthur? Let's look at it quickly. So the Merlin-Arthur algorithm is as before. So if we are given X after guessing the Y, if we can estimate the acceptance probability deterministically and accept if it's greater than 1/2, then we can put the Merlin-Arthur algorithm in NP, because now we only have to guess Y, and the verification part will be deterministic. So this means if promise BPP equals promise P, then MA equals NP. And also MAX collapses to NX.
So your algorithm A will be ACC algorithm. Your algorithm A will be an ACC 0 algorithm, right?
Actually, no. It's
a polynomial time algorithm.
it's actually going to be an NC0, NC1 algorithm for some reason.
It will be NC1 algorithm.
Yes, for some reason.
Which we don't know how to distinguish from a polynomial time algorithm.
Yes, but that's kind of enough because I'll get to it later.
Okay.
But actually, the MAX lower bound can be easily adapted to the average case. You can show that MAX cannot be half plus 1 over polynomially approximated by P/poly. That's a quick proof, which you can also produce at your own hand. So this actually means that, but the message is that this means that if promise BPP equals promise P, then NX equals MAX. So NX cannot be half plus 1 over polynomial approximated by P/poly. So therefore, derandomization can directly give you average case lower bounds, at least in this very simple setting. And of course, we have to do much more. But let's review the average case lower bounds for MA, which are already known. So as I said, this one shows you that MAX cannot be half plus 1 over polynomial approximated by P/poly. And the most recent improvement by Centenam shows you that MA/1, so MA with 1 bit of advice, cannot be half plus n to the minus k approximated by n to the k size circuit for every k. So this is pretty strong. So now we can try to derandomize this MA algorithm to get some lower bounds for n-time classes. So if promise BPP is in P, then we can put this MA algorithm into NP. Then we know NP cannot be approximated by n to the k size circuit for every k. And if promise BPP is in quasi-polynomial time, then we know NQP cannot be approximated by P/poly.
Should all these classes have 1 bit of advice, NP and NQP?
Actually, no, because you can somehow absorb that advice into the definition of the Turing machine. Just put the advice into the last bit of the input. this does not work for MA because MA has some promise. So, but sad reality is that derandomization is super hard. So the first question we ask is that, can we relax the OR condition? The most important observation is that we can use non-deterministic PRG instead of PRG. So what is a non-deterministic PRG? So this is MA algorithm in case you forget. So the PRG, you are given an input 1 to the n. N is a parameter. You guess that witness W first. And then you either reject W and then stop. Or you just proceed and take a seed and to compute a PRG. So it's like there are many, many computational passes. And on most of them, you may stop. But if you don't stop, you have to proceed and compute a PRG. So how does this help? This helps because this non-deterministic PRG, NPRG in short, can still be used to derandomize MA. The algorithm is pretty simple. Suppose I want to derandomize the MA algorithm here. We guess both Y and W. If the NPRG accepts W, we continue and try to estimate the acceptance probability. And otherwise, if the NPRG rejects W, we just reject. But that's fine. So NPRG seems easier to build rather than PRG. And they still suffice for derandomizing MA. That's the important part. And the observation too is that we are fine with conditional construction. What do I mean? So to show, suppose we want to show NQP not in C, it suffices to prove that assuming NQP is in C, we can construct a polylog seed length NPRG. Just prove by contradiction. We're assuming something first and try to construct a polylog NPRG. And then we can derandomize the MA lower bound to get NQP worst case lower bound. So now we know if we have a conditional PRG, we can get circuit lower bounds, which is great. The question is how to get the conditional NPRG.
Conditional means that you're allowing also C in your...
Conditional means that we can assume NQP is in C first, and then try to build a PRG, something like that. So we just assume the lower bound we want to prove is false, and then try to build some PRG. Just get the help with the assumption. So still the question is how to get the conditional NPRG to start with. There's a wonderful bootstrapping theorem by William 10. He showed that if we have a non-trivial cap algorithm for subexponential time circuits, this will imply a polylog seed length NPRG. So you can bootstrap from a non-trivial algorithm to a very fast derandomization, which is but you somehow sacrifice it because you're moving from like algorithm to non-deterministic PRG. And also in William 11, he shows that he gets such an algorithm for cap of subexponential size ACC0 circuits. So okay, it looks like you can combine these two to get the NQP not in ACC0, maybe back in 2011. But that's some caveat here. The first issue is that the resulting non-deterministic NPRG only works infinitely often. So the NPRG only works for infinitely many input lengths. And also the bootstrapping only works for general circuits. So it's not clear how you apply the algorithm for ACC0 directly. So for the second question, it's actually not hard to get around. We only have an algorithm for ACC0 circuits, and the bootstrapping requires such an algorithm for general circuits. But we can assume NQP is in ACC0 for proving the worst case lower bound. So this actually implies that P/poly collapses to ACC0. So the intuition here is that because of the collapse, we can pretend that the algorithm actually works for general circuits, because we know general circuits is equivalent to ACC0 circuits under this assumption. But of course, there are some technical detail which I hide, but the intuition is that because the collapse, we can pretend the algorithm works for general circuits. So we can still do the bootstrapping. That's good. The more subtle issue is that we only have an infinite orphan NPRG. And so let's review the MA lower bounds. We know that MA not inside n to the k says that the hard language L is worst case hard for on an infinite number of input lenses. That's what it means MA not inside n to the k. So what if our infinite orphan NPRG somehow very unluckily just avoid all these input lenses? Then basically we get nothing. So it's like, so suppose the red region is the hard region of the MA language, and the red region here is the working lenses of the NPRG. It's infinite orphan. So if they don't intersect, then we have no derandomization at all. But assuming the MA language is hard everywhere, then we are fine. We can still get some non-trivial hardness. So it seems like we need an MA hard language L, which is hard on all input lenses, like almost everywhere hardness. However, this is an annoying open question. We don't know how to avoid that. So the partial solution by Williams in 2013 is that he showed a conditional almost everywhere MA lower bound. So what's this? Suppose we assume NX is in piecewise poly, because we want to prove some NX lower bound. Let's assume this. Then we have MA equals exp, right? By the IKW work I mentioned before. So by some padding, we know that quasi-polynomial time MA equals 2 to the polylog time, 2 to quasi-polynomial, by some padding. And in these time classes, you can do diagonalization against all circuit classes, all circuits. So this means under the assumption, the quasi-MA class is not in piecewise poly almost everywhere, right? Because it equals time to the 2 to the quasi-polynomial, which is not in piecewise poly almost everywhere by simple diagonalization. So under the assumption we want to disprove, we have almost everywhere MA lower bounds. So you can put pieces together to prove the lower bound. But unfortunately, this step to get the collapse from MA to exp, it only
before you move beyond the NX, I mean, even if you have infinitely often and the other one is almost everywhere, they can still miss each other, right? You know, almost everywhere, and they can still miss each other.
No, because almost everywhere will be like, almost everywhere is something like you only miss a constant number of input lenses. And infinite often is, yeah, almost everywhere. That's the definition of almost everywhere, right?
Fine.
So it's like starting from some empty. Okay. So unfortunately, this only works for almost the lower bounds against NX, because you want to assume, you want to get the collapse from MA to exp, which needs the requirement NX not in piecewise poly. So this is basically the major reason why previous proof only works for NX, because you need some collapses like this. So this viewpoint is mostly from the from some other paper of Ryan. This viewpoint is different from how it is presented in his famous paper. But that's basically what happened if you open up the proof of IKW.
So just to stop you, the last line in this slide, this is the major reason why previous work only for NX. So when you say this,
I
you
mean
how the infinitely often misses the PRG?
Yeah, how to handle the infinite often NPRG to get some lower bound, because this seems to require you almost everywhere MA lower bound, and the only way previously the way we handle that is to Ryan handled that is to show conditional almost everywhere MA lower bound. This requires a collapse from MA to X to MA. So later, Murray and Williams come up with a beautiful idea of fully solving the issue. So the key observation is that suppose the NPRG can work for like MA on impedance n. Of course, it can also work for the MA on impedance n by 2, because you can actually, the determination is working for circuits, and the smaller the impedance, the smaller the circuit. So think about this idea. It's actually not really infinite often. The NPRG can be used to derandomize an interval of input lenses of the MA language. So for polylog incidence NPRG, the interval could be of quasi-polynomial stretch. So that means the NPRG actually is not like many points, it's many intervals. So actually, we don't really have to use that almost everywhere MA lower bound. We only want the lower bound to be dense enough to catch catch some intervals. So they show that the infinity requirement is that for all n, there's a m in the quasi-polynomial stretch such that L is hard on impedance m. So like for all quasi-polynomial intervals, there will be some hard input length. Then this is enough to make sure they two intersect each other. And Murray and Williams proved such a lower bound. Okay, great. So now after you have such two ingredients, we can combine all the pieces to get the NQP lower bound. The bootstrapping means that the bootstrapping and the circuit and the algorithm for sub-exponential time is 0, and also the almost everywhere MA circuit lower bound. You combine these two stuff, you get the conditional IO NPRG, which is polylog incidence for general circuits. And then you combine this and this, you show the NQP is not in SA0. So how can we adapt this to the average case? So the worst case lower bounds is just almost everywhere lower bounds plus conditional IO NPRG. And we just try to improve both of the construction. First, we can get almost everywhere average case MA circuit lower bound. And second, we can try to construct the polylog incidence conditional NPRG under the average case assumption. So this part is done in the previous work So the question is, how can we get this? Okay. Any questions so far? So let's see how the conditional construction of NPRG works. So we know that if we have a fast algorithm for general circuits, then this implies polylog incidence NPRG. But the bootstrapping only works for piecewise poly. And in the worst case lower bound, we use the assumption that NQP is contained in SA0, which implies piecewise poly collapses to SA0. And then we can pretend we have algorithm for piecewise poly, and we are good. But in the average case, we can only assume NQP is approximated by SA0 circuits, have the collapse. But the solution is that the bootstrapping also works for NC1, which is circuit of all log n depths. And we can show similar collapse that if NQP can be approximated by SA0, then NC1 collapses to SA0. So,
could you back up?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to show this in detail here. So actually now here's the previous approaches in three steps. So first, we show that assuming NQP can be approximated by SA0 circuits, then we have that NC1 collapses to SA0. And second, since NC1 equals SA0, now we can pretend we have non-trivial algorithm for NC1. I mean for formulas, you can think about it, for formulas. And then you can use bootstrapping to get polylog incidence NPRG for NC1. And then we prove that there's a language L in MA time to MA quasi-polynomial time such that L cannot be approximated by NC1 circuits. Then we can apply the NPRG to derandomize this MA algorithm to NQP. Then therefore, we know the NQP cannot be approximated by NC1. But of course, NC1 is stronger than AC0. Then we get the contradiction. So we want to improve this 0.99 to half plus 1 over n to the minus k. So how do we do that? So the question is that now we want to prove NQP cannot be half plus 1 over polynomial approximated by AC0 circuits instead. So which steps of the previous 3 steps breaks? If we want to improve it from 0.99 to half plus 1 over a polynomial. And step 2 is totally fine. Because we already assume NC1 equals AC0. And for step 3, nothing is affected. It's affected. The real question is actually step 1. So the question is that if we assume NQP can be half plus 1 over polynomial approximated by AC0, can we still show a collapse from NC1 to AC0? It seems very unlikely. So, but let's see how we show such a collapse theorem. So assuming NQP can be approximated by AC0, how do we show a collapse from NC1 to AC0? The idea is to use random self-reducibility. So consider a random self-reducible NC1 computed language, L. So that is, there's an error-corrected D such that if C computes L on a half plus epsilon fraction, then D to the C computes L exactly. So it's a random self-reduction. So the previous class in the previous class in Chen 19 shows that if NQP can be approximated by AC0, then NC1 collapses to AC0. This is achieved by getting error correction in AC0. So that's an NC1 computed language L with an AC0 error corrected D, such that if L can be approximated by C, then D to the C computes L exactly.
How many queries does the error correction that the coder makes?
I think it requires like polynomial queries.
Polynomial?
Polynomial.
But then it still needs majority, right? So
So I'm talking about the previous, that's like a 0.99 approximation. So here you don't need that, you don't need a majority.
Okay.
So here you only want to correct 0.99 error. Yeah. So if L can be approximated by AC0, then NC1 collapses to AC0. So we actually, as Abby said, we are making the previously 0.9 is crucial because we don't know how to correct more errors actually. So key issue here is that assuming NQP can be half plus 1 over polynomial approximated by AC0, how do we show an NC1 collapse from NC1 to AC0? If we think about this, we want to correct very close to half error, like half minus n2 minus k error. And typically, such an error corrector requires majority, right? As Abby said. If we just apply majority, then we are not good because we only have the collapse from NC1 to majority of AC0. And we don't know how to do circuit analysis on majority of AC0 to pretend we have an algorithm. So this is similar to the previous barrier of like harness amplification require majority. But here the crucial thing is that we don't want to do harness amplification for all functions. We only want to focus on this NC1 computed language. So the previous barrier does not apply in this setting. The key idea is actually using approximate linear sum. So what is approximate linear sum? So let's say be a circuit class. A linear sum of C is just some linear combination of many functions from C. So alpha from real and Ci from C. Good. And we say F is an approximate linear sum of C. if there is an L defined as above, such that Lx minus the absolute difference between Lx and Fx on all the input x is very small. So something like, consider this sum. If Fx equals 0, then this sum should be minus epsilon within, it should be close to 0. Otherwise, it should be close to 1. So for example, a function f has approximate degree d if and only if it's an approximate linear sum of n functions on d inputs, right? So it's a generation of the approximate degree. You can also think about like a quadratic function or something like that. So it's a natural extension of approximate degree. So what we show is that there's an NC1 hard language with an approximate linear sum error corrector. So this is used some technique from cryptography in NC0. So what does this mean? This implies that if L can be approximated by SA0, then NC1 collapses to approximate sum of SA0. How does this help us? So why approximate sum is better than majority? The key feature of approximate sum is that they preserve algorithms. Given an epsilon approximate linear sum of C circuits, say L equals sum alpha I times Ci for a Boolean function f. If we want to derandomize f, which means computing expectation of fx over all the random x, using the linearity of the expectation, we can write expectation of ELX to equals expectation of CIX. Because it's an approximate linear sum, this is going to be epsilon close to expectation of fx. What does this mean? This means that if we have a fast algorithm for approximating expectation of Ci, this implies fast algorithm for estimating the Boolean function f. So with this observation, in the previous work, we will show that non-trivial sharp set algorithm for SA0 implies non-trivial determination of approximate sum of SA0 by using this inequality. And then this implies NQP cannot be computed exactly by an approximate sum of SA0 circuits. So do I how many? Okay. So maybe let's skip this. It's basically telling you how to get this approximate sum stuff. Well, I'll finish in 5 minutes. So let's see a quick proof of NQP not in majority of SA0 circuits. So it starts very quick. It starts very simple. So suppose NQP can be approximated by SA0 circuits. This implies that NC1 collapses to approximate sum of SA0. And by the previous work, NQP is not in approximate sum of SA0. So therefore, NQP is not in NC1, and also not in majority of SA0. I'm hiding all the stuff because this is building on this work, and this requires some PCPP stuff. But if NQP cannot be approximated by SA0, then just apply the discriminator lemma. We know that NQP cannot be computed by majority of SA0. So getting worst-case lower bounds against the majority of SA0 with the idea of approximate linear sum is very simple. To get the real NQP average case lower bound, we still have to finish the 3 steps. And as I discussed before, now we have the first step done, third step done, and we have to try to finish the second step using the algorithm for derandomizing approximate linear sum to get a conditional construction of NPRG against NC1 circuits. This involves use of PCP proximity. See the paper for more details. I'm already running out of time. So to conclude, the technical take-home message is that approximate linear sum is amazing. It's both weak and strong. It's weak in that it preserves the algorithms. If you have generation of C, you also have non-trivial generation of approximate linear sum of C. It's also very strong in the sense that it can do non-trivial error correction, even with error very close to half. And conceptually, the take-home message is that algorithms for C is a weaker class, can indeed imply lower bounds for majority of C, because it implies average case lower bound. So which is a stronger class. So algorithms for weak class can imply lower bound for stronger classes. So there's some open question. So we show cap algorithm for C imply lower bounds for majority of C. So can we extend this connection to some other type of algorithm, maybe like symmetric of C, or of C, structure of C, etc. Just trying to get more connection between algorithms and lower bounds. And the second question is that what else can we do with approximate linear sum? This seems very interesting. Can we apply this to build a deterministic PRG for AC0 parity? And what about p-uniform AC0 parity circuits? That may be simpler to build. And is it possible to do hardness amplification for any function with an approximate sum error corrector? Very interestingly, Levin's proof of XOR lemma actually uses approximate linear sum, but it does not seem to give you an approximate linear sum error corrector. So finally, let me remind you the open question of proving lower bounds against majority of majority of majority. So here is the end of talk. Any questions?